All right. Look at that.
Good work.
Excellent. Thanks to Alyssa for the genius behind the solution. All right, everybody. Well, we're just starting to see people roll in, so I want to just thank everybody for joining us for the December MSK Innovations Pitch event. My name is Drew DeAngelis, and to my left is TJ Halverson. We're with the DeAngelis Group, executive search firm in the musculoskeletal industry. And today we have an amazing group of people. First, I'd like to just let everybody know from a disclaimer point of view that we are not a broker dealer. MSK Innovations is a platform for informational purposes only. This isn't to be construed as investment advice. We're not investment advisors. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence as a result of this, and hopefully you'll have some great questions for our CEOs as you hear from them and as they pitch. But before we get into the pitches, I have three amazing guest panelists. And so I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, and we will start with Robin Young.
Hi, thank you, Drew. And thank you, TJ. It's great to be here. Yeah, my background, I was about 25 years on Wall Street, wound up being head of life science research for a company called Stevens, then helped start the Health Point Capital private equity fund, and decided I'd had enough of Wall Street. After about 40 years doing that, started a little blog that became Orthopedics This Week, and now I am also part of the DeAngelis Group. So it's been a lot of fun times meeting creative, innovative engineers and surgeons, and it's one of my great pleasures to support them and write about them. And Drew, TJ, thanks for putting this together. This looks like a fantastic program.
Well, thank you. And David, we'll turn over to you. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, David Dvorak. I have 25 years of medical device executive experience, Steris Corporation, and then Zimmer Biomet. Since then, I've been part of co-founding, early investing in a dozen different healthcare companies. So really enjoy these presentations. I'm anxious to get into the decks because all three of them look like terrific innovations and opportunities. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dave. And Chris, please introduce yourself.
Chris Lyons. I've been in the industry for 36 years, worked for Smith & Nephew for the first 13 years, Medtronic Spine. The next 13 years ran all their buy-side M&A for about 10 of those years, and then stepped out and started Southern Metrics, my consulting firm, and do all things sell side. I focus heavily on business lifecycle management for these companies, regardless of where I meet them.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And so now we'll get to turn it over to our innovators. We've got three amazing CEOs of truly innovative companies. And so for our first presenter, we're going to turn to Alyssa Huffman with ALLUMIN8.
Perfect. I'm okay to share and run through the deck?
Go ahead.
Fantastic. Okay. Hi, my name is Alyssa Huffman. I am the CEO, founder, and inventor of ALLUMIN8 Orthopedic and Spine Hardware. ALLUMIN8, A, to be at the top of the trade shows, Lumen to shed light on, and the infinity symbol to always shed light on in a very dark market. As you know, it's a commoditized market right now, and I'm excited to be here. This is a personal journey. My cousin was an incomplete quadriplegic. Her screws loosened from her spine. My uncle is a diabetic. He's on his 7th spine fusion. And he also had screw loosening, but he also, because he's diabetic, he had infection issues. My father needs a spine fusion, and he, because of lesions in his spine due to oncological purposes and issues. All three of them needed spine fusions. Biomechanically, all three of them would fail for various reasons. My goal here having been a distributor and sales rep for many years and then going into the executive functions, my goal here is to recognize that this is something we can do here is we can parlay therapeutics into hardware and create a new category of hardware. 3D printed porous hardware with the ability to therapeutically deliver antibiotics, drugs, and also draw in bone marrow and stem cells into the device. The top problems in spine fusions in particular. Now, keep in mind this technology is a platform technology. It can apply towards dental implants, trauma, sports medicine, total joints. But where we feel like we can do the greatest global good is in the spine fusion. 1 out of 2 patients typically have a screw loosening issue, which leads to rod breakage. When we're talking about as a distributor, I sketched this out in the OR in 2009 after seeing multiple failures and then them happening to my family. And I read a paper by Dr. Zadpour out of the Netherlands that demonstrated bone is significantly different in the lumbar spine. So if you're thinking about putting something heavy on a wall that has a lot of macro and micro motion, and you're looking at a wall scaffolding and you have the 3 choices on the left, you're not going to choose the lumbar bone. But that's what surgeons have to work with. And which also explains why we don't have these loosening rates in other areas of the body, particularly even in the foot and ankle, which much smaller bones with much larger loads. This is an image you'll see here in the red arrows, the screw back out issue. This is just in 1 month. So what we did is we took the trabecular pattern of bone and we 3D printed it into the hardware. Now, 3D printed titanium, as we know from the interbody cage, the best and highest level of clinical data that is available is you take a porous implant that has the trabecular pattern of bone, you pack in autograft mixed with bone marrow. So that's basically what we're doing here. The screw is in FDA submission currently. As you screw the screw in, it collects autograft within the pores of the screw. And we have the ability to draw in bone marrow, then re-inject it. And by doing so, you give multiple passes for those cells to attach to the bone inside the pores. Here's a video of the drawing mechanism. Apologies if anybody's doesn't appreciate blood, but it's a quick view of what it looks like. So basically what we're looking at as an implant in general, just the Gaussian pattern of trabecular bone alone, without putting any therapeutics through the device, demonstrates 2 times better, more than 2 times better bone formation, stronger, faster, harder bone just after 4 weeks. And then at the 8-week mark, we're looking at almost 4 times stronger, better, harder bone in comparison to just a standard or just regular pores. Our goal is to go in from knowing that there's exclusivity agreements. We are working around those exclusivity agreements with respect to revision surgeries. This is also where we can demonstrate a reduction in the overall revision rate. Eventually parlaying that into gaining adoption and in probably 7 to 10 years, hopefully a new code for therapeutic hardware. This is what the competition looks like. It's a smooth screw. Sometimes they have holes in the distal tip, which is actually the worst area to put your fenestrations in. But and we have the ability to draw in bone marrow. Our IP portfolio, we have 7 patents filed, 9 more that we are about to file, and multiple trademarks. We are in FDA submission for a 510K and working on our alpha launch build. We will be probably around July, August into our beta launch. The pedicle screw market is large. We all know that. But the platform that it can apply to is extraordinarily larger. Our go-to-market strategy is using distributors, and we'll have some internal sales reps. But as having been a distributor myself, I recognize the value in being invested in the company. We plan to offer shares in the company Our marketing campaign is Why Not? Got Milk was the most powerful marketing campaign to date. If we are not changing anything about cost, technique, and we're simply providing options that never before existed in hardware, why not try this integrate? We have a direct-to-patient PR campaign disclosing my personal journey. It's a brutal one. You probably read it in Orthopedics This Week, maybe. In 2018, I was in the middle of a divorce, got hit by a drunk driver going 77 miles an hour, required brain surgery the next year, told my employer I was number 1 or number 2 for that billion-dollar company, and they let me go 2 weeks later. So I decided right then and there, had I become incapacitated, my greatest regret would have been, outside of not being there for my son, was to not bet on myself, because I knew surgeons that would have appreciated this. We have a big market, so there's big goals, but they're very calculated. We have a bottom-up and a top-down pro forma built in. We know exactly how many screws we need to sell and how many surgeons we need each month. Here's the market share. It's a big one. Our team has over 200 years of experience, and I'm grateful for them. Dr. Coitan over at Duke University, Dr. Zach Ray at WashU, Dr. Electus Theologius over at UCSF, and Dr. Meyer Jairao over at Cox Health and University of Missouri are our clinical key opinion leaders who have been with me since day one. Our advisory team is robust and globally interested. Again, we are a global company right out the gates, and our regulatory team is significantly tenured as well. We've raised 1.6. We're raising another 1.4 on a convertible note, and we have 15 million that we plan to raise in milestones. Again, we've received a lot of media attention. We just won an innovation award over in Shanghai, as well as an arts grant in St. Louis. Thank you very much for attending. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Maybe I'll kick it off. Alyssa, thanks very much. Great presentation, really an interesting innovation into an unmet need, obviously. Can you just walk us through the 510K clearance and your roadmap that you envision relative to differentiated claims in the years ahead?
Absolutely. We do not plan to make claims. So this is a porous pedicle screw 510K. We are saying we are just as good as any pedicle screw on the market. And actually, our data shows that we were 50% stronger in ASTM 1717 dynamic testing than 98 screws in the registry. So we're pretty proud of that. The Circulate device, that will be submitted to the FDA. And we do have strong alliance. The FDA has been wonderful to work with. I'll just say that. We anticipate clearance around January or February on the screw. The Lure Lock and delivery system that draws in the bone marrow, we plan to submit that probably April, May, so mid-year. And that we are doing a comparison for a Jamshidi. And that is a really cool and interesting product because in particular, there's a lot of research on a new stem cell that was recently identified within the spine. And so we are the only company in the world that A, has passed FDA testing for 3D printed porous pedicle screws, and B, we are the only one that has the diagnostic capability to draw in the bone marrow. So identification and research, we can provide bone marrow from every single vertebral body. That's spine fusion.
And so directionally, your business case, you show a pretty attractive ramp up on the top line. Do you just give us a sense as to how much of that is the 510K clearance on the base pedicle screw as opposed to the subsequent filing that you expect in April?
That is 100% based off of the screw alone. And we already have surgeons lined up for the next 3 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alyssa, one quick question that I had is that you had mentioned a new code that may be necessary from a reimbursement standpoint in the 7 to 10 years from now for therapeutic hardware. Do you see, or what is your read, I would say, on reimbursement as it relates to near term?
We are just strictly sticking with the CPT code. Our goal is to create a registry, and we're working on that. We've been working on that registry for several years, hoping to get a grant to apply for a grant, a research grant with it. And that alone will cost about $2 million. So gathering the data, we have distribution partners over in Japan, China, India, Australia, Dubai, the UK, and we're looking for someone in Switzerland. And we recognize the FDA is really focused on diversification of patient portfolios. And we believe that that is the strongest data we can get is international exposure to various patients and tracking their information. Does that answer your question, Chris?
Yes.
Thanks.
You. Robin, you're muted.
Okay, how's this? Is it better?
Yes.
All right. So Alyssa, obviously, I've seen this technology. It's awfully clever. To me, this seems like a twofer. So if I'm a surgeon, I'm confronting a difficult case. I'm worried the pedicle screw is not going to stick. So I'm going to be thinking about my screw and then something else. 2 different products, maybe the same vendor, maybe 2 vendors, but now my surgery just got more expensive. So my question for you is, assuming this is a twofer, what are you replacing in the surgery, and how do you compare against that solution in terms of cost with your solution?
That is the perfect question, Robin. Thank you. So again, this is all off-label, right? So surgeons have to understand that, number one. Until we can gain clearance with other implants, we are going to be very clear about that. However, we know that products on the shelf work sitting in bone next to hardware, right? And so, for example, a diabetic patient, by delivering calcium sulfate mixed with antibiotics, which sits on the shelf for $50, right? $50 to $100. You inject that through the device, knowing that that diabetic patient is more worried about infection, right? You can deliver that through the device.
My question is pricing.
Yep.
Are you going to be able to come in at or below the alternative?
We are coming in at matching pricing for cannulated fenestrated screws.
So, but remember, the solution is a twofer. So you're going to have cement plus a fenestrated screw. So you got 2 things you're buying. Can you come in below the cost of those 2 products combined?
So they're going to use that either way, right? Mm-hmm. So which one do they have to prepare more for? Do they have to, with our screw, they don't have to technically prepare in advance for an HA coded
faster
screw. Yeah.
So it's faster, it's time saving. There's a cat behind you. And
my adopted cat. Yeah, I have 2 of them and a dog.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's good.
Thanks.
Alyssa, I have a question from the audience from Matthew Likens. He said, you mentioned an award in Shanghai. Are you planning to commercialize outside the U.S. and specifically in China? China scares me from an IP protection point of view.
So that's the beautiful partnership with China. China, this alliance with the Innovation Center over there gives us protection as well as alignment with the Chinese FDA. So it actually provides us stronger protection to have an alliance with China. And yes, we plan on going globally right out of the gates. As we gain regulatory clearance within those countries, and it will be very strategic. This is not a mass, it seems like it's a mass play, but it's a very strategic play at the same time. So we know the cities that we want to work around and expand from and collaborate with. And we have a GM already set up in India and Asia.
Great.
Okay. Seem to be on mute, Drew.
All right. Well, any other questions from our panelists?
Well
All right.
done.
Listen,
You.
I like this technology a lot. I think the big thing I think about is execution, but I think Alyssa is very clever. I obviously like making a fundamental product for spine surgery multifunctional, deliver more for the same, keep. That's why I focus on pricing. And, if you're going to go global, there's a lot of logistics issues there. So, but no, real clever product. I like it.
Great.
Thank you, Robin. Yeah, we're not trying to change the world. We are trying to lower the revision rate. That is the primary goal here. And I think that's the best way to get it through the door.
Change the world. What do you mean?
We
are
trying to change the world. I agree. Perfect. But
all right.
we're trying to do it logically, knowing where all of the roadblocks are.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Alyssa. We'll take it to our next presenter, Ben Holmes, over at Nanochon.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here this evening, everyone. All right, so I am Ben Holmes. I am the co-founder and CEO of Nanochon. We are an early-stage medical device company which is developing an implant to treat one of the biggest problems in orthopedics today, and that is osteoarthritis. So currently, and I'm sure that many of the people on this call are familiar with this issue, the cartilage in our joints, especially our large load-bearing joints like the knee, over time lose their ability to stay durable, and that cartilage starts to wear away. Eventually, patients reach a point where that cartilage has worn away so much that it leaves essentially a pothole in the cartilage surface, which is referred to as a focal defect or a cartilage lesion. The big challenge clinically is that these defects are often the point at which the disease presents pain, but once patients get to that point and are seeking diagnosis and treatment, things like injections, physical therapy, and lifestyle changes no longer have an effect, and surgery is required to address the pain and correct that damage. Now, if you're an older person, maybe in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, modern medicine has a go-to solution for you, and that's the knee replacement. But generally speaking, if you're under the age of 55, and especially if you're a younger adult, there is no good go-to solution that's going to offer you a robust, long-lasting repair. The clinical strategy today is really to do a series of leapfrogging procedures to try to delay or push off that need for the eventual replacement. So that's the paradigm that we see ourselves coming into. We've developed an implant designed to effectively treat this type of cartilage damage and loss, both immediately in the short term and also in the long term. The platform is based on two key components. The first is a proprietary material, which is primarily based on nylon, but it's a highly organized nanocomposite that actually simulates the structure of collagen as it exists in cartilage. So it's a totally synthetic material, but it has this collagen-like pore structure that's highly aligned. That gives the material cartilage-matched mechanical properties, but it also acts as a really good substrate for cell growth. And then the other component of our device is advanced manufacturing. So we actually take that material and we 3D print it into a scaffolding. Just to be clear up front, we are not using 3D printing to do a patient-specific device. This is going to be an off-the-shelf device that comes in standard sizes. But 3D printing allows us to create this very well-organized structure that allow the body and new tissue to grow into the device very quickly and interact with the material. So that's exactly what we've observed now in multiple large animal studies, most recently with a horse. You get wicking of blood and active cell populations from the subchondral bone immediately into the device upon implantation. And then what we've shown in these studies is you also get incredibly rapid regrowth of tissue. In just 2 months, you actually see complete structural and anatomical rebuilding of the zone of injury. With things like biologics or other standard of care treatments, you don't see anything like this until at least 6 months after recovery. So this is incredibly significant. And then ultimately, over a period of several more months, we do see the maturation of this tissue that's grown into healthy cartilage as well as healthy subchondral bone. I'll talk about it a little more when I go into our preclinical data, but rehabbing the subchondral bone is also a very critical piece of adequately treating these defects and providing the patient with an actual durable, long-lasting repair. And that's one of the ways in which the current treatment options fail. In the US, for this so-called pre-knee replacement population, there's really three main treatments that a surgeon is going to go to if someone's too young to just default to that knee replacement. The first is microfracture and other purely surgical techniques like debridement. All of these techniques primarily work in the same way. It's debriding out the diseased cartilage and stimulating the bone to try to regrow some kind of tissue. But the big problem is this doesn't regrow real cartilage. It regrows essentially a scar tissue. And that scar tissue doesn't have real longevity. So the tissue itself breaks down over time. And then also this type of a treatment does nothing to preserve the subchondral bone. So you actually see the continued progression of osteoarthritis. And within 1 to 2 years, especially with microfracture, a majority of patients progress to needing a more invasive revision. In terms of those other options, osteochondral allograft is still considered the clinical gold standard. This is actually sourcing cadaver tissue and transplanting it into the knee to try to rebuild the zone of injury. Osteochondral allograft is very hard to source. So, in a patient population of roughly 700,000 knee arthroscopies, there's only 15 to 20,000 of these done a year. And then also, it still doesn't offer a lifetime benefit for many patients. Many still progress to knee replacement. So, in response to that, some of the device and cell companies have developed these cell therapy products, which are designed to introduce live cells into the cartilage lesion and try to regrow something. The big issue that they're having, though, is that they have very complicated workflows, and they haven't demonstrated better clinical outcomes than osteochondral allograft, but they have a price point of sometimes up to $60,000, and that's just for the therapy product. And so you have a patient population that's primarily still in the private payer system, and there's a lot of resistance to coverage for these products. And so that's really the 1-2 punch of what Nanochon has developed. We have a platform which we've demonstrated in rigorous preclinical models has the potential for vastly superior clinical outcomes for these patients. But at the same time, it's a fully synthetic material. The device is manufactured at scale in a controlled setting and distributed just like any other off-the-shelf device or consumable. So we really have a lot of flexibility to price this device much lower than the cell therapy products. And then also the surgeons get the most excited about the volume component, the fact that they could actually have this on the shelf ready to be pulled and used as needed for case after case, rather than some complicated bespoke tissue or cell that has to be sourced in a lengthy process. We have a very healthy and growing target market. We're estimating a $2 billion opportunity annually in the US. That's based on a patient population of close to 500,000 annually that we believe would be a candidate for the first Nanochon treatment in the knee. But we see opportunities to expand into treating the same types of cartilage defects in other large joints, such as the ankle, shoulder, and hip. This is close to a $4 billion opportunity annually. And then our technology as a platform can really be scaled to create a variety of implants of different architecture, sizes, and shapes. And so we believe that there's really opportunities to address soft tissue repair all throughout the body. And this could represent a $10 billion total addressable market annually. So now I'm going to talk about some of that data. I'm sure everyone on this call knows that we as an industry and as a body of clinical and academic science have been trying to regrow cartilage probably for at least 40 years, if not more. So there's a lot of technologies that have been tried and failed. So I think it's really important to talk about our preclinical data. We invested in doing a horse study. So horses are notoriously difficult healers, and horses, unlike all of the other large animal preclinical models that are used, like goats or sheep, actually present human-like osteoarthritis in these defects once you create them, if they are not treated adequately. And so that's exactly what we saw. Not only did we see in the control groups the kind of inadequate scar tissue that we expected, but we also saw pretty substantial bone degeneration and or bone thickening, which is very indicative of the types of bone degenerative changes you see in osteoarthritis. Conversely, on the right-hand side, the Nanochon device is stable and holding up at longer time points. It's also completely infused with a healthy cartilage tissue, and the underlying subchondral bone is completely normal and healthy. So we did multiple time points in that horse study, but I just want to really stress this point that we do see that progression of tissue regeneration and healing left to right. This is our 2-month, 8-month, and 12-month time point. And essentially everything I just said is what you're observing here. There's this initial rapid infusion of a non-inflammatory, non-scar tissue. Over time, you see it developing into hyaline cartilage and the bone is restructuring. And then finally, when you get out to a year, You see the cartilage in the device is at a resting state, and the subchondral bone has been returned to a normal state. We also see significant preservation of the cartilage on the contacting side of the joint. So on the other side of the joint, where cartilage is rubbing against the lesion, again, in the standard of care, we see degenerative changes already presenting in that tissue. And again, the adjacent tissue surface in the Nanochon treated groups is completely normal, showing no signs of physical wear or inflammation. We've also spent a lot of time over the last year really perfecting our surgical workflow and surgical tools. We now have a design of our device which requires minimal bone removement and no additional external fixation like darts, glues, or sutures. At the same time, it's getting double the pull-out force of osteochondral allograft, so it's actually superior to the clinical standard. And we have a coherent set of easy-to-use, easy-to-understand surgical tools that, again, are already very reminiscent of procedures that these surgeons are doing today. To talk briefly about myself and the team, I've been leading the company since 2016. I've raised $8.2 million for the company to date, including $1 million in non-dilutive funding. My co-founder, Dr. Castro, is the CTO. He's a very highly experienced and decorated researcher in the cartilage biomaterial field. We also have a really great core team of other executives and advisors, a lot of experience up here in strategy, business development, commercialization, and clinical execution. We have a really great board of directors representing some of the biggest early stage investors in orthopedics. And finally, just to brag a little bit, we've had a lot of coverage and attention for all the work we've been doing, especially over the last couple of years, receiving a Johnson & Johnson Quickfire Award and also participating in the MedTech Innovator cohort this previous year. We're on track to complete a first-in-human clinical study next year. This is a PMA device, so we'll be looking at a 2-year pivotal study, and we're hoping to be market ready by 2029. Also looking at comps in the space, we do expect a high probability of a M&A event close to or at the point of FDA approval. And so finally, why I'm here tonight, we're raising a 1.5 million bridge round. 1 million of this convertible note is already committed. We also have an additional 300,000 soft circled, so we are looking for an additional 200,000 to fill out the note, and we also are willing and prepared to oversubscribe. So again, I am Ben Holmes. We are Nanochon, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Ben. Great presentation.
Thank you.
I'll start. By the way, Ben, great job. That was
Thank
super.
you.
So you're right. You took me back to the Carticel days when I was covering that when that came out of Genzyme Biosurgical. What are your key points of differentiation if you're trying to sell this to a doctor or a hospital? How are you gonna sell against, for example, longer lasting injections or products like CartiHeal that Smith & Nephew has? So what are your key points of differentiation?
Yeah, so we have a workflow which is a lot simpler and more user-friendly than things like CartiHeal or even some of those injectable products. We also have a device which allows for immediate weight bearing and much faster rehabilitation, which CartiHeal does not offer, and some of the other things like biologics do not offer. And then also, we have a device which, again, being fully synthetic, much easier to distribute. So we believe it'll just be easier for surgeons to get our product and easier to keep in stock.
Okay, super. Anyone else?
And it is packaged sterile, Ben?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. The other question I had on that front is related to IDE approval. Has that occurred?
Yeah, so we are going through the IDE process right now, but we are, I'll say, still kind of working through the process with FDA. So we're actually trying to get a Canadian clinical site up and running within the next several months. So if the IDE eventually doesn't go our way, we should still be able to enroll the full safety study in Canada.
Okay, thanks.
And Ben, can you talk a little bit about the size of the focal defect that you think you can address with this technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're starting with a range from 10 millimeters to 20 millimeters, and that's just with a single device. But we also believe, based on the type of tissue regeneration we're seeing and the way we're seeing it, we should be able to treat even larger lesions with multiple devices. So we are talking about, based on what we see in a safety study, increasing the size of the lesion further for a pivotal study.
Okay, and then what do you contemplate by way of imaging to diagnose a subchondral defect?
MRI is the clinical standard.
Okay, and to the extent that there is a defect or edema identified subchondral, does that change the prep and the depth of your synthetic solution?
Yeah, I think that what's nice about our platform is we've also demonstrated substantial ability to regenerate bone as well. So we believe that chondral or minimal bone involvement lesions can still use the same device.
Okay.
I think the one thing that we are trying to stay away from is if there's a significant subchondral bone cyst. So I would say that is not an appropriate patient for what we're developing.
All that makes sense. Good. Thanks, Ben.
Another question I had, Ben, was relative to the normal radius curve, right, of the femoral condyles. Is this contoured in such a fashion to where it matches once it's inserted?
So the device itself is not contoured. It's essentially just a flat surface, but in our workflow, it should be implanted slightly recessed, which we did do in the horse study. And what we showed is that you do get conforming of the material and the tissue that grows over time to form a proper anatomical surface.
Yeah. Hitting that subchondral bone slightly recessed, you allow the scaffolding to fill up and grow, I'm guessing.
That's exactly right.
What do you think the learning curve would be like for a new user?
Yeah, so honestly, a lot of physician feedback and multiple voice of customer tests on these tools. It's really reminiscent of an osteochondral allograft tool set. I think the only difference is that we'll have to educate surgeons that they don't need to go nearly as deep as they do with an OA graft. So our device is only 4 millimeters thick, only going 1 to 2 millimeters into the bone. So I think just making sure they understand that they don't have to ream a centimeter deep to place this device, that they can be a little bit more shallow with it.
So I was just editing an article that talked about the explosion of treatments in pain management centers, ASCs, outpatient office, and so on. Mm-hmm. That's why I asked the learning curve question. Are you looking at this as something that would be strictly for surgeons to use, or would you think about other places this could be used?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Our tools are designed to facilitate arthroscopy, and we are going to really thoroughly evaluate that more in our pivotal study. So I think if you have a pain management specialist who has the setup to arthroscopically enter the joint and quickly drill a hole, they should be able to learn it. I would say definitely compared to things like biologics, it's way more user-friendly. Yeah.
If you can make it for the complete idiot, I think you might have something.
Well, I'll tell you, I've done a couple cases in a cadaver, and I'm not a surgeon, so I was able.
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
Ben, I have a question from the audience from Chance Leonard. He said, "When do you expect the first in-human trial?" I think you may have heard that.
We're expecting to do the first clinical case by the end of March. Hopefully a little sooner, but I think no later than that.
Let's see. I got one other that just came in. What's the cartilage type that's grown into the defect? And then would this be only indicated for the femoral condyle or excluded from the patellofemoral joint?
Yeah, so we are seeing true hyaline cartilage. It's not fiber cartilage or something else. So I think that's a big plus, right? In terms of indication, in the safety study, we're looking at the medial and lateral condyles and the trochlea. But we are talking about expanding that further in the pivotal study, again, based on what we see in this safety study. And then there are plans, we're pursuing grant funding for additional work to look at other joints like the ankle and the shoulder.
I gotta tell you, Ben, I think nail on head with the horse study. That is a very, very challenging animal to do anything, particularly with cartilage. I can't imagine. I was a Cartiheel patient. Well, I was supposed to be. I got put into the study, but I decided to back out of it due to the long nature of recovery and non-weight bearing. I think specifically the non-weight bearing aspect of this is really where you're going to take a home run, because patients don't want to be non-weight bearing for up to 6 months. So, you might want to tell the audience how quickly the data, I know you mentioned it briefly, but I think that's really the home run here for you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that commentary and that perspective, Alyssa. Yeah, I mean, the very first pathology slide I showed was from 2 months. So seeing complete fill of the defect in 2 months, frankly, is unprecedented. And then, the maturation of that tissue into cartilage is happening even sooner. So, we already saw hyaline cartilage at 8 months, and certainly it looked even better at 12 months.
Okay.
Great.
Great.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks, Ben. Great presentation.
Ben.
Thank you.
We'll
Yeah,
keep
Appreciate it.
rolling.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
Well, Dr. Kirschman, you are next with Orthomod. We'll let you take it over here.
All right. Well, let me share my screen here. All right. Hello. My name is David Kirschman. I'm actually a former neurosurgeon, but I've been in the medical device industry now for about 25 years or so. I had a company called Spine, which some of you might be familiar with. And we exited that back in 2015 and couldn't keep me away. And so, saw this opportunity and had this idea and really wanted to jump in with both feet. And so here we are. So, what we're trying to do here with Orthomod is really invent the world's first true artificial bone. And really, what does that mean? And we are all pretty familiar with orthopedics on this call, and we are all aware of fixation products, PEEK, titanium, and fusion products, your biologics, your calcium phosphates. So you have your structural biomaterials and you have your bone substitutes, but there's always been a missing gap. There's always been something in the middle. And this is a problem that I've been thinking about for probably 20 or 30 years. You have the cage, and then you stuff the biologics in the cage, and there's always been this kind of dichotomy, this sort of, you need both. And why can't anyone unify this? Why can't anyone develop a fully, truly load-bearing biologic? And no one's really been able to do that. And so I kind of set out to sort of do that, and felt that it would really change the industry. So we're really excited about what we've been doing. I don't need to tell the folks here the size of the orthopedic implant market. Obviously, it's huge. Obviously, there's multiple verticals that we can be involved in. 50 billion plus. Brought together a great team. Obviously, I'm an inventor and an entrepreneur in a number of different companies. Brought Dr. Sean Hunter and Matt Otten together, as well as some great folks like Todd Albert and Bill Walsh, and a group out of MIT that really did the hardcore chemistry work, and Dr. Parvizi and others, and so really kind of got a dream team of folks that I knew personally and really wanted to kind of work with. So what the product is what we call CAMP, calcium acrylic modified polymer. So it's a new biomaterial. It's meant to be an alternative to PEEK, titanium, or allograft bone in multiple applications. Obviously, as a spine person myself, the first thing I'm going after is spine. And it combines the orthobiologic properties of fusion and the mechanical properties of fixation in a unified implant. It has a small amount of absorption along the surface, but is generally considered to be a non-absorbable device, like a PEEK would be. We can, anywhere you can use allograft, you can use this material, but of course with unlimited sizes, no risk of disease transmission, and uniform performance. Our first marketed product will be the ModC cervical and vertebral implant, followed by a cranioplasty product. So both of these have been submitted to the FDA. We have had our Q-Sub meeting, and we expect clearance Q1 of 25. On the cervical, probably more like Q2 on on the cranial. We developed a full new proprietary process in developing this, and so it's not just a new material, but it's also a new way of making things. So we're all familiar with, you know, the incredible growth in 3D printed product, but the problem with 3D printed product, or most products, is that they have inherent weaknesses, shear lines, because they're manufactured in layers. What we've done is actually developed a new system where we 3D print a mold and then inject the mold with the material, so you can make any shape. You have the infinite flexibility of 3D printing, but you have a fully isotropic implant without any shear lines or any weaknesses in it. Make complex 3D structures, so it's really an exciting technology. The mold is actually resorbable, so we absorb it's actually water soluble. It's pretty cool. You dissolve it away, and there are your implants. It's actually pretty neat. The material has no layer weakness. This is a low-cost process. It is an industrial process. The material can be even drilled, tapped, and screwed. And we do this all in-house. So we've completely developed our own facility here in Dayton, Ohio, where we do all this work in-house, all the way from the resin to the final implant. So then, talking about the performance, these studies were done by Bill Walsh down in Australia, where when comparing us, this is a 12-week sheep implantation, CAMP versus PEEK versus titanium. Strong proliferation on CAMP. You actually see growth into the surface of the implant. PEEK, not so much. Titanium, not much at all. And you can also see what's really cool here. This is kind of the money shot here, is actually growth into the surface of the implant. So the implant itself is actually participating along the surface in the fusion process. And so you actually have a faster fusion and faster formation of bone by about 4 weeks compared to the PEEK or titanium implants. You will see strong osteoblastic activity in these histological slides, but you also see no inflammation. So that was really cool. As we did our ISO 10993 studies for biocompatibility, we didn't see any abnormal inflammation, macrophages, white cells, those sorts of things. And you know, how do we achieve this? Well, there's surface microporosity. So we all know that titanium PEEK are not naturally porous. We have about 100 micron microporosity, which allows for this bone ingrowth to occur. But we don't have to mill in or machine in or mold in aggressive features on the surface that can potentially harbor bacteria and cause other issues. So it's just naturally this way. From a radiographic visualization standpoint, this is something as a surgeon that I really appreciate. It's isodense to bone. So it's not like titanium, which is a total whiteout. It's not like PEEK, which you see straight through and requires markers. This has this kind of speculated appearance. It's about isodense to bone, so we don't need markers. We don't need tantalum markers. But at the same time, you can actually clearly see the fusion take place. So it represents the best of both worlds radiographically. The amount of applications are infinite. Okay, so we're obviously starting off in spine and cranial, but you know, sports medicine, bone void fillers, dental drug delivery. Since it's a porous product, we can include antibiotics or analgesics even. I work with Dr. Parvizi on a product to do this in with the material itself as it's extruded, and we can easily do that. And then of course craniofacial as well. We have great intellectual property. We have seven pending patents, and for the material, for the manufacturing process, and then the implants itself. Our technology roadmap. So right now we have the CMF with craniomaxillofacial and C-spine pending. Again, expect initial launch in the middle of next year with production ramp thereafter, followed quickly by lumbar spine, and then getting into the sports med anchor, suture anchor, interference screw market, and then after that, dental. And then also building out the rest of the spine portfolio, where we're looking at doing a sacroiliac, we're looking at doing a facet technology. I mean, really anything that you can make out of PEEK or allograft bone, you can make out of the Orthomod material. And so in summary, this is a disruptive technology. This is the first new structural biomaterial in orthopedics in 20 years. And so this will be highly disruptive. It addresses critical needs in healing, cost, and complexity. Key de-risking and validations of technology have been completed. This is a platform technology which is scalable over multiple submarkets. We got a strong IP portfolio, great team, including a commercial team. I still know the 200 distributors well that we had at X-Spine that are chomping at the bit and have already signed up and invested in our company, ready to take on this product. Obviously, we're all here knowing what a large and rapidly growing industry orthopedics is, and we're really uniquely positioned to improve patient outcomes, surgical experiences, and reduce costs. So we're really excited about this, we are right now. We've actually just extended our seed round. We've got about $4 million in this so far. We just extended our seed round out another $1 million. So we're looking to get that. We're looking to get that closed, and that's one of the reasons why we're here. So anyway, that's about it, and I thank you for your time and attention.
That's great, Dr. Kirschman. This is Chris. I just had a couple quick questions I wanted to pass your way. When you compare, I don't know if I saw a chart on this, but the modulus of elasticity of the implant compared to bone, where does it fall on the chart?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So this falls right at cortical bone. So PEEK is like cancellous bone, titanium is like off the charts, and we're right at the cortical bone. So we're right between. We're a little bit firmer than PEEK, but not much.
Okay. If there were competitors in the marketplace, because porous PEEK, it's never really taken off, but at the same time, there's footprints of it. But how would they say, or how would they try to refute what you're stating in terms of your comparison of calcium to porous PEEK? Is there, where does the benefit lie more greatly, and how could you stand up to that?
Yeah. Well, for one, we're going to have a bioactive claim. So, we're working with Bill Walsh and actually showing osteoblastic proliferation along the surface of the implant. So we're going to have a bioactive or osteoactive claim that PEEK will not have, and so that'll be one thing. And PEEK, as we all know, it's an extremely inert material. Even if you make it porous, it's still just a porous, very inert material, and you're not actually going to have that anchoring of bone into the surface of the implant. So
right.
So the answer is in biology.
Got it. I'm just glad you didn't have a blood wicking slide.
No, blood wicking. No, absolutely. Bioactivity along the surface. Yeah.
Exactly.
That was good, Chris. That was good. I will say it's interesting. So metal is, I think most everyone will agree, is too stiff, too strong. And if you use metal, you're opening up the door to potential biofilm and infection. And yet metal is 85% of the market. And I think that really speaks to some of the shortcomings of the alternative. And so that means there is space for a better structural kind of implant, such as the one that you're suggesting. I have two basic questions. Have you tried to grow biofilm on your product? And then the second one is kind of related to Chris's question of how, you position it as something that is different than PEEK or different than metal, but I'm actually interested in how close it comes to cortical bone in not just modulus of elasticity, but tensile strength and yield and things like that. So let's start with biofilm. Have you tried to grow biofilm on this implant?
We haven't specifically tried to grow biofilm on the implant. Obviously, we've done our animal implantation studies, our sheep studies, looking for looking for inflammatory cells, the formation of an inflammatory layer, and did not see any evidence of any biofilm formation in the animal studies. So that's, could we do additional work in that vein? Yeah. Well, we certainly, we certainly could.
I think if you are able to make the case that this is less, reduces the risk of biofilm attachment or infection, it doesn't mean you have to be antibacterial. Just It's less risky. That's a powerful claim these days. So anyway, back to cortical bone in your product. How close?
Yeah. So from a mechanical standpoint, just sort of compression, tensile, it's far superior to any bone, any cortical bone, any allograft, autograft, far superior. I mean, if you look at our social media site or whatever, we have this thing where we actually took a cage, we drove a truck on top of it, and it's just like sitting super strong material, stronger than PEEK actually in compression. And so, but as far as any natural product like allograft bone, far superior. Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
And you have the benefit of being able to make it in any shape. So that was one of the initial inspirations for doing this. This is like, well, if you want to make a cervical corpectomy cage, and you want to, but you want to make it out of allograft bone, and you're stuck with using these strut grafts and things like that, because you can never find natural bone in that size. There's always that problem. So this is almost a way to kind of get around that, in that it's very bone-like, but it can also be manufactured in any size or shape.
Doctor, I'm curious, beyond the 200 relationships that you referenced, and obviously instant offense potentially through those relationships relative to proving market acceptance, do you think about a go-to-market strategy along the lines of licensing Orthomod to the big players and never having to invest in the distribution channel through those B2B relationships? Because you do have something that you're positioning, in an enticing way as being a new material that presumably could satisfy a lot of needs and be attractive to various players.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to answer that. I think that's our plan I think we need to have a go-to-market plan. I think it needs to be aggressive, and I think we need to show sales, and we need to show ramp. And lately it's just, if you look at the acquisitions that are taking place, companies want to buy a business, they don't want to buy a product or a project. And so I think that we have to to get the maximum ROI, we have to sell the product, and we have to have a business, and we have to show that we can grow the business. Now, disclaimer always is, if somebody shows up, the day after, the approval and says, hey, we just want to take this, obviously we'll talk to them, but I don't think I'm not sure how realistic that is. Now, one caveat, once we start talking about things that are a little outside of the management wheelhouse, like dental or sports medicine, then I think we'd be more aggressive to sort of seek partnerships in some of those areas, but maybe run the spine and the neuro ourselves, because that's kind of where we come from. But, so I do think that you need to build a business. My personal philosophy is you need to build a business. But that said, there's always that caveat where somebody shows up and has different ideas, always willing to talk.
You're definitely hitting all the buttons that I relate to from an M&A perspective as I'm listening, Dr. Kirschman. And that's one thing. It leads me to a final question I had, which is you showed on the chart, revenue generation starting in spine in 25, and then 26, there's going to be some additional applications in 27, the same. There is a theory, a business thesis, as it relates to greatest exitable value, right? And I think about this a lot, and I've seen many different amalgamations of how that happens. But one thing is why not focus in one area, go deep, like you were saying, right? And then worry about the other things to maybe be earn-out milestones, R&D milestones for companies. The other thing I would state too in that regard is, as you're building that business, and you're spot on, you got to go produce revenue. Nobody cares. They're not buying you for the revenue. They're buying you for the proof of acceptance, right? And one of the big things that I think is that we all want to get to revenue faster than anything else, and driving it through spine predominantly would do it. Here's another thing to think about. If you did all the projects and you're trying to get acquired, okay, tell me which companies would be the ones most likely to take the whole enchilada versus having to do an asset sale?
Well, obviously it's going to be your top 3 or 4 global companies, are going to be the ones that are big enough to really leverage the whole shebang, that have multiple verticals. So yeah, and we all know, we all know who they are. And, and so that would be something. Now, one other thing that we have discussed internally and have talked about, with our investors is, does there have to be one exit? Could there be multiple exits? Could there be a dental exit? Could there be a sports med exit? Could there be a dental exit to like a Henry Schein? Could there be a sports med, exit? Could there be and could there be a spine exit? And it might be worth more to the investors, in pieces, than somebody, than just trying to sell the whole shebang and then have maybe some of the portfolio not really monetized in the long run. And so that's something that we're going to be aware of, as
that's great.
As an option as time moves forward, for sure.
Yeah, because especially when you start crossing those different verticals, they're so siloed within the big dog organizations that they have a hard time coming to a decision, because hips wants this and spine wants this and trauma wants this.
Yeah, for sure.
Dr. Kirschman, one quick thing. I think this would be a fantastic product for AVN. There's only a 40% rate of it being effective. You only need a 4-instrument little tiny kit that can be disposable. There's a great reimbursement code, and it's not a trauma product, so you don't have to have it there so quickly. It's a planned operation. So I think this would be a fantastic product for that.
Oh yeah, AVN, definitely. Cancer, cancer is another one. And the other thing that we can get into is custom, is certainly custom implants, particularly for cancer reconstruction, cranial reconstruction. But yeah, I mean, it's really, we're trying to focus on sort of the core stuff. We don't want to get indigestion from too much opportunity, try to go into too many different directions. But yeah, all that stuff is definitely on the table for sure. I think it's a great indication.
How are you thinking through pricing?
We want to be directly competitive as far as pricing with competitive, like let's say in the cervical cage space, we want to come in the same as a PEEK cage or a 3D printed cage. And so this is a very low cost process. We do it all in-house, like I mentioned, and our cost of goods is very low, much lower than it was when I was manufacturing PEEK cages, as a matter of fact. And so, it's an industrial process where as quick as you push the button on this injection molding machine, out pops the implants. So we can be very competitive on pricing, but really what we're going to go for the center of the market. We're not going to try to raise prices. We're not going to try to show up to HCA and say, okay, well, we're going to charge 30% more because our product is so great. That's not going to fly in this day and age. And so we want to be really right on the money as far as not increasing prices over and above what people are using today. And maybe in the long run, we might even be able to reduce prices.
Great. Thank you. Well, any other questions from our wonderful panel? All right.
Well, very good presentations.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your presentations today. I think Drew's mic is completely given up the ghost, so gonna wrap it up for us here this afternoon.
Did you tell him he's on a timer?
Yes,
Yes.
he is. He is on a timer. But again, thank you to Ben, Alyssa,
Thanks,
Dr.
everybody. It was
Kirschman,
great.
Robin, Chris, Dave. Thank you so
Terrific.
much for everyone's participation. Thank you to everyone for attending.
Okay.
Sign up for next
Mhm.
event, January 8th. It's on our website. We look forward to seeing you there. Happy holidays.
All right.
Yeah.
Enjoyed
It's
it.
a pleasure.
Thanks,
Everyone.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.